Hello guys, so I am going to go through some of my new chess game video on Lichess. So I haven't made contents for quite some months. As you all know, I possibly have told before or announced on the channel that I have moved to Houston, Texas from um, Indiana in United States last year. So it's still taking a little bit for me to adjust to the new place. And as usual, I was playing chess, making less contents, and I'm also busy with my work. So today I'm going to go through some of the new chess games that I played. So this shows my current Lichess rating, which kind of is near 1600. Sometimes I go up to 1600, and sometimes, if I'm not mindful, then my rating goes down. And I have played some interesting games recently. I mostly play 5 minutes 0 second increment, and yeah, so this game was very interesting that maybe we can go through today. That I played against the user Toru Branca. So let's go through this gameplay. So he started with e4, the pawn move, and I just moved e5. Then he right away attacked my pawn with d4. I just took his pawn, and he takes with his queen, and then I basically try to chase his queen away with my knight at c6. He moves one square down, and he's at d3. I activate my other knight at f6. He activates his knight as f3, and then I push my pawn at d6. Now if you look at the square at e5, then this square is being controlled by me with my pawn at d6 and also my knight at c6, versus I have two controls versus he has one control from his knight at f3. Now he activates he moves his bishop at e2, preparing for a castle from king's side. And now I move my knight to e5. He takes my knight. Then I take his knight. Then we make a queen exchange. Now the only way I can take or make it equal is my king taking his queen, which basically means I cannot castle anymore. Now he castles. Idea is that he will make his rook activated and put on this d file here. I take the opportunity to take the pawn. Now I'm one pawn up here by taking the pawn at e4, and now he's attacking my knight with his bishop at f3. I push my knight from c8 to f5. Now he's forcing me to move the knight. What do? because I'm already one pawn up, I no longer care about my pawn at e5, and I'm rather attacking his bishop at f3 because I want to sort of open up this file to attack his king there. Now what does he do? He takes one pawn at b7, attacking my rook at a8. I attack his bishop. He attacks my king or checks my king. Maybe it would have been better if he would take my pawn here at e5, but he chooses to just give me a check. Because if he would have taken my pawn at e5, then I'm in trouble, because also he could also take my knight with bishop, so it is a bad game for me and for him too. I'm just realizing that when I'm analyzing it now. So I just block his attack with my bishop at d6. Now he checks me again by taking the knight, as I was mentioning. Now I chase or attack his bishop with my pawn move at f6. He just, because he's already a knight up, he just takes the pawn. I just takes his knight. He's still a knight up, so he's like, well, now he is a pawn up. I don't know why he chose to take the pawn then. Like, he could have just backed down. Oh, I guess he, even if he would have backed down here, I would just take his bishop here. So ultimately he would be one pawn up. I mean, I could his two of his bishops are threatened right now. The bishop at b7, the white square bishop, and the black square bishop. So on his end, he wants to protect the white square bishop in this case, and now he's moving the white square bishop to a6. Now one good thing for me that I finally were able to open the G file directly, kind of like picking the queen here, sorry, picking the king or wanting to attack the king eventually, and he now attacks my bishop, and eventually I cannot move this bishop because that way I will lose my pawn at h7. So what do I do? Actually, I don't care. I still move my bishop to h3, but now because his pawn is pinned at g2, well, he just moves his pawn first, otherwise I will just take that pawn, check him, and keep checking for a bit. Now I take that pawn at b2. He's still not taking the pawn at h7. He just moves his knight. His idea, I guess, to move his knight from c3 to, I believe, e4. I need to fix my camera here. So now if I look, what does he do now? So I move my king from e8 to e7. Now he checks me. I kind of move away because I could have moved from e7 to I did not want to go back to d7 here, so I was at e7. If I would have gone to d7, for example, here, he has a fork, as you can see. If I move to d7, he can take this pawn at f6 with his knight, and then I lose my rook at g8. So therefore I uh, move to towards my left here to f7. I did not, why didn't I go to I went to f8, why didn't I go to f7? The reason is then he can bring his bishop, this white square bishop, and then I may lose my rook. So that's why I did not want to be on the white square. So now anyway he attacks this pawn now, and also my rook. So I move my rook to g7. Now he charges my rook at b file at b2. I did not want to make an exchange here, because if I make an exchange here, he eventually brings his other rook from d file to b file, and then pressures me, because as you can see here I'm already pressured by this bishop attacking my h7 pawn. Then the knight is very dangerous here. So I sort of go kind of like say that, hey, I don't want to make an exchange at this moment, but he exchanges anyway. I take my bishop at b2. Now he charges the same way as I said with the other rook. Now bringing this bishop at d4 does two things. I can come back to b6 and protect two pawns altogether. Now he gives me a check. I go to the f7. So he brings his knight back. I don't think that's the best move for him. He could have definitely, well, his knight is being attacked here, so he could have gone to d5 and attacked this pawn here. Anyway, so I am moving my rook up. That was actually a bad move. This was a suicidal move. I did not see, because he can, if he can just now check me at d6 and take my rook, but he missed it too. Instead he just pushes his rook at b7, and I remember I understood my mistake and I just moved right away to protect this pawn here at c6. Now he moves his pawn. I bring my bishop back to e7. He checks me. I move to f6. He takes my bishop. I think even in here, if you would have taken this pawn here, that may have had a better outcome for him. So I'm already okay. Now it's still he's one pawn up, but he can just take my pawn at h1 and be two pawn up, and he is ideally in a winning position here. But he moves his rook back up to b4. I just charge his or attack his rook with my bishop. Now he attacks my other pawn at a7. I just now push my pawn from h1, h2 to h3. He activates his king, starts moving his king. Now I sort of block the b file with my bishop at b6. He moves his pawn from f2 to f3. I'm trying to liberate my rook at c5. He moves his pawn at h4. I try to bring my king towards the left side because he has 3 pawns versus I only have 1 pawn. He brings his bishop to e4. I am back to e6 because I don't have much move to make. He brings his king down. I repeat the move at f6. His king is approaching. g4. Now I see the danger because he can come down here and take my pawn, so I make a move down to g7. His king is at h5. Now I kind of like want to trade the rook. He trades the rook. Now it's kind of like a end game where he has one more pawn, and that's why probably he was feeling confident. But as you can see, I have some game there. I go to c3. He charges my pawn. I have no other option but to take it. Actually, I did not take it. So he now pushes his other pawn at c5. I push my pawn at a5. a4. I bring my bishop down. He pushes his pawn, and I bring my bishop down at d6. He brings his bishop down at d5. I move my bishop at e7. Now he takes. Now I can no longer take. So he brings his bishop to e4, attacking the h7 square here. I bring my bishop to f6. He attacks my bishop with his king. I go down there at e7. Now his pawn, I take his pawn at f4. 2 pawn approaching on h file. Then I just move my bishop. He moves his pawn at h7. We're already at the 52 moves. It's a pretty long game. And then I go to c3. He moves his another pawn. But as you can see, he can't do anything because he does not have a rook or a knight, or he only has a white square bishop, so he cannot shake me. Now he charges my bishop. I bring my bishop back there. He actually tries to attack. His idea is that he wants to make a queen here with his c6 pawn. Now as you can see, I bring my bishop down there. I think that was a mistake on my side. So he still ignores it. He probably should have taken my bishop, but I think I was ahead in time, as you can see. And then I just bring down my bishop so he can take my bishop because my bishop is protected. And I just move back and forth, back and forth. He now takes the other, tries to take the other pawn. I think that's my mistake because we are both low in time and making mistakes. Now he takes that pawn. I actually could have saved it because I could have just gone from d6 to b4 and protected. But I think I was sensing that I will win by time. And also I could still have my bishop to block, and I just take it. and I just move back and forth. 65th move, back and forth, e6. I go to e3, he goes to f5. I just move back and forth. So we just do a lot of back and forth here. And finally, I take his pawn at h6. He's very low in time. And then I make my queen ultimately. He takes